Hello and welcome to a review of the BOOX Note Air 2. We will be doing a lot of comparisons to other products that this is similar to, for example, the remarkable Rewrite 2, and we'll also be comparing the reading to reading on something like a Amazon Kindle. Now, opening up the box straight away, we noticed just how nice the product seemed. It really feels and looks like a premium quality product. Now, based on where you are in the world, yours will either have a screen protector on it or not. In the UK, we didn't have one. Inside the box, you get the manual, the pen, and the charger cable. But after charging it, we noticed right away that ghosting may be an issue because what was on the screen does appear on your wallpaper when you turn the device off, but we'll look at that in more detail. On the side, you have a speaker on the very left, a microphone, that tiny little dot, then you have your USB-C charging cable, your power button, and your antenna band. You can see a lot of fingerprints on the back. This thing is a little bit of a fingerprint magnet, but it's so remarkably thin. I mean, look at this compared to just a normal pencil. It is incredibly thin. It's beautiful. It slides around very easily on a table, and it feels like it's going to drop out of your hand at any time. They do offer a leather case and a non-leather one. I believe they're around $40 to $70, depending on which one you go for. So make sure you put this in a case. You can see the speaker there on the screen. This is something the Remarkable does not have, and it actually reads out audiobooks to you. And you can also, with the microphone, take notes that appear on your PDFs. It's pretty extensive, the list of what this can do. Let's start off with the screen, as it's probably the most important thing on a device that you interact with the screen most of all. It is a bit of a fingerprint magnet and they don't wipe off easily, your finger oils, so you do need to use a cloth to wipe it off. That was just after a minute's use. Now, booting this thing up for the first time, it does take a while to boot up. You can reduce that by turning off essentially what is the battery saver mode on it, and it boots up a lot quicker, but your battery will also die a lot quicker. But as I said, the first thing we want to do is really test out this screen in all lighting conditions. This is a screen outdoors. This is a worst case scenario. I tried to reflect the sun onto it, but this camera makes it look a lot worse than it actually is, to be fair. That's in a gallery with a window directly behind me with the sun beaming in, and it still is viewable. I decided the next thing to do was to take this device and compare it to what it's supposed to be replacing essentially, which is paper. So I thought I'd go down to my local bookstore and see what it's like side by side with paper. I was out at the time, just for the record. I didn't leave my house to go and find a book because I do have books in my house. Okay, so let's pop into our local bookstore. Hope these things stay around for a lot longer. So many are closing down left, right, and center in London. Let's grab a book off the shelf and let's compare it side by side with a book and let's see what it's like. Again, you can see there are some reflections here. Side by side, the text is definitely sharper on the Note Air 2, and it's just as much of a joy to read as it is with a book. You do always lose that sensation of turning pages, which I always love working my way through a book, so you get that sense of progress, but hey, can't have it all. Now, this does have the Kindle Store, which the Note Air again does not, and it works really, really well. It works really well in terms of being able to read books on this thing. We'll dive into that a little bit more in a second. The screen is beautiful. It doesn't have as high of a pixel density as a Kindle Paperwhite, but you really cannot tell. Even putting them side by side, you'd be pressed to be able to tell which one has the higher pixel density. Here it is with a comic book. That's about as much stress as you're going to be able to put on the screen of this thing, and I really wanted to see what it would be like in terms of reading books. As I said, works perfect, no issues. You also have a lot of features on this that you don't have on the Rewrite 2. Remarkable haven't put any sort of backlighting, whereas with this, not only can you have backlighting, you can also control the yellow tint to it to make it more comfortable at nighttime. This allows you to both be able to read at night, take notes at nighttime, or in a dark room, something the Remarkable doesn't have. I'm putting on something that's really going to show the quality of the screen here. It works fine. I'm not really a comic book fan at all. I can't remember the last time I read one, but if you take a look here at the bottom, this is one of the things that perhaps causes me to have a little bit of an issue with this thing, and that's that it has a lot of options. At the bottom of the screen there, it gave me the option to view this comic book in normal mode, speed mode, A2 mode, and X mode. I had to actually Google what each one of these things were because, you know, A2 mode, X mode, it doesn't really make too much sense to anyone. changes what you can see on the screen. It reduces the detail, but in reducing the detail, the refresh rate of the screen gets a lot higher. So you also get a lot less ghosting. It's a sacrifice either way, so you got to decide which one is more important to you. But you can also adjust things like the contrast of the screen, the sharpness. The list just goes on just how much you can do with this. And that's also possibly a negative thing for some people, because for some people they're going to think, whoa, this is just, opening up one menu where I thought I'd get one or two options and seeing 100 different options is just way too much. As a tech enthusiast, I love that amount of control. If I was going to give something to my father, it definitely wouldn't be this, because this would be just overly complicated and complex for him. Now, in terms of reading actual books on this, now you get a lot more options on this when it comes to books. You can stream the books to any speaker. This is just a Bluetooth speaker that I connected it to my Google Home device it worked with, and it will use the built-in software to read out the book for you.
Leave off this minute. She generally gave herself very good advice, though she very seldom followed it. And sometimes she scolded.
You can connect Bluetooth speakers to this, headphones, and it actually reads books out to you, something again the Remarkable doesn't do. And you'll find that's quite a theme in this review. The Remarkable just does not have the functionality that this thing does. Now, they do say on the website you get about 4 weeks battery. Not very accurate, because I found after about a week of medium use, like 3-4 hours a day, the battery went down to 0. A few little issues. You see where it says setting? It's kind of slightly going off the edge of the screen. The time, for example, will overlap. The UI in this could be a lot more intuitive. The localization could be a lot better. You'll choose options, for example, and it will say, would you like to do the following? And your options are okay and jump. Okay and jump, like what does that, what does that even mean? The use of English language in this is not really great, and it makes you second guess what you're doing. But hopefully this is something that in future updates could be rectified. Now, as you can see, I've gone ahead and disabled battery saver mode essentially, and it turns on and off far, far quicker. Now, another thing that this has, which Remarkable doesn't, is it has an app store. This is both good and bad. Now, let's start off with the bad. So I went ahead and I tried to download apps that I would use, BBC News, Google Drive. Yes, you can put stuff like YouTube in here, but it's pointless. You get about 2 to 3 frames per second, and it just looks horrendous. But this is an issue that I had. It said the device isn't Play Protect certified. Again, I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea how to fix that. Any app that I tried to open, it told me that it wasn't allowed to be used on my device. Google Drive, BBC News, Microsoft Word, just literally any app that I opened that I downloaded from the App Store, none of it would work. But then I found out that what you had to do, and again, I had to go on Google. I had to go on Google for this device more than any device I've used in the last 10 plus years. But I went on Google and I realized what you need to do is you need to get your Google Service Framework Android ID, and you need to put that ID onto the Google website and link it with your device. This is what I'm saying about the UI not being very intuitive. One of the main things of this device is the App Store, and the fact that you need to go through this to get the App Store to work. If I gave this to a lot of people I know, they would so struggle with this. By having integration with the App Store, it leaves the door open for you to be able to download many apps in the future, not necessarily just from the company, but third-party apps. And yes, Microsoft Word, for example, whilst it works, there's such a lag between typing on screen and having the letter show up on your actual screen that you're far better off either just using the Word app on your phone, on a laptop, on anything. This is literally a last resort product for typing, viewing videos, going on the internet. It really is. So I did eventually get it running. Everything was working fine. The Dropbox app, the Kindle app, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Chrome, everything was working fine. Now, I will say one thing. It's a double-edged sword. Yes, it's great that you have access to things like Chrome, Word, YouTube, but a lot of stuff, it just runs so poorly on this that you're probably not going to want to use it. Now, let's take a look at the reading experience. You can take notes, you can change the contrast, the format, you can split the view. This works so closely to what a Kindle does that I actually prefer reading on this because it's a bigger screen. I still have that night light. I can get it to read to me. It has a speaker built in. It's it blew me away, because I had come from a Remarkable 2 where the reading experience on it was just completely bare bones. It was pretty much an afterthought, but on this it worked great. Now on to taking notes. I just picked a note here. I can share it with Dropbox. I can open it in my Dropbox with no issue at all. Books do have their own app as well, which works great. We'll have a quick look at that in a second. Let's see handwriting recognition. I can write on this, and the handwriting recognition is better than the Remarkable 2. Trust me, if this thing can recognize my handwriting, it can recognize pretty much anyone's. And the good thing with this is the handwriting recognition is free. Whereas with the Remarkable, you have to pay £7.99 a month to have that pleasure. You can also export in various formats, as you can see on the screen. You can also share with other apps such as Google Drive, Books' own Drive, and it works really well. The integration works really well. And the other big advantage is that you can add audio notes. And if you send someone a PDF or a file that has the audio attached, they'll just see a little play button at the top, and they can go ahead and they can play that, which is really invaluable, especially if you're sending someone a PDF that might be a little bit complex. Instead of calling them and talking them through it, or instead of sending them a text message or an email to explain it, you could just add an audio note. Website works great. Everything worked fine. Little bit of a pain again setting it up, but it all worked fine. And I also, by the way, I was intentionally misspelling us to see if it corrects your spelling, and it did not. Now the app, few issues. For example, I would try and connect and it was telling me that my reader wasn't connected to it. I'd get some Japanese text show up on screen, even though I'd chosen English as my language, which was a little bit frustrating, but eventually it worked. I got it to connect again by just turning everything off and on. Seems to have fixed the issue. There's a whole load of things you can do. You can literally take a picture with your phone and have it appear on your books. Now, I had to actually screenshot and freeze where files are saved on my phone, because what you see on screen literally comes and goes within 2 seconds. So unless you can memorize that whole string of where your files are saved, it'll be impossible to find. Even then, I couldn't follow the string to find my files on my phone, which was frustrating, but they were always on the books. There's just so much they're trying to do with this that I really think they could have polished things a little bit better for it to work better. Having foreign text appear on English text, or having, your files go to random locations that you then can't find on your phone, it can be very frustrating. Now, the main reason you obviously purchase something like this is for the writing experience. It does have 4,096 points of pressure, which is the exact same as the Remarkable 2. The Remarkable 2 does have one advantage over this, in the sense that you can tilt the pen in different angles and it recognizes that. This does not. But other than that, I really can't think of anything that the Remarkable does better than the books. Actually, hold on. The pen. I really dislike this pen. I'd much prefer the pen on the Remarkable. To be fair, it does stick onto the side of the device okay. It just always seems to be slightly misaligned. The hood they've created to protect this tip, it baffles me. It looks like somebody had forgotten to design this thing, or had forgotten to make one, and with 10 minutes to go before they were shipping it, someone ran and grabbed a bunch of plastic and quickly put this thing together. It's such an ugly, just hanging piece of plastic for such a beautifully crafted device. It doesn't make sense. The nibs, you can use Wacom nibs on this. They do need replacing. I'll put on the screen how often. You can use nibs, as I said, from third parties, so you can find competitively priced nibs. They do need replacing, unfortunately, but that's just the way the technology is at the moment. But again, it's a really good sensation when you write with this. It's as good as when you write on paper. It feels good. It even makes the noise. I'll try and play it here. It even makes that noise, so when you're writing, it genuinely feels like you're writing on paper. I didn't enjoy the pen, but hey, at least unlike the Apple Pen, it never needs to be charged. It works fine. This thing is beautiful, and I really appreciate how much the company is trying to do with this. I just wish the user interface was a little bit more refined, and it was just a little bit more user-friendly. Having so many options, is it absolutely necessary? I love being able to customize things, but when you have a ton of options that use not always the best use of the English language, so half the time you're not really sure what the option means, and you're constantly on Google trying to figure out what this does or what this option means, Hopefully they can fix this with future updates, but saying that, there is so much they do right here. They allow all the functionality you would expect, and unlike the Remarkable, they don't charge you extra for this functionality. It works well with the online integrated site that they have. It all integrates together pretty well, and it works fine. You can add audio notes, you can screen record with this device, and it has so many advantages over Remarkable's product. When you read books, it's a lot more pleasurable. It doesn't just have the most basic functionality like the Remarkable. This actually has everything you'd expect. This thing is beautiful, and I really appreciate how much the company is trying to do with this. I just wish the user interface was a little bit more refined. Just when I was, for example, loading up this comic book just to see the quality of the screen, there was normal mode, speed mode, A2 mode, X mode. There was just so many options, so much customization with this. And it just comes down to one thing. If you are willing to invest the time and the effort to really get to know everything the books can do, it is hands down more customizable than the Remarkable. Let's take PDFs, for example. You have a load of options on the Onyx when it comes down to PDFs because it uses its own software. You can sharpen the image, you can mess about with the contrast, you can zoom by pinching zooming, which you can't do on the Remarkable. You can crop, you can embolden, the list just goes on and on. Whereas with the Remarkable, it seems like it's very basic in terms of features. You can't even pinch to zoom in order to, zoom in on a PDF, and you have to actually bring up a menu and press the plus and minus button in order to do so. However, there's even more advantages with the books on this. You can leave audio notes for people, which you can't do at this time with the Remarkable. That is the end of the review. I hope you found this helpful. If you did find it helpful in any way, shape, or form, please just leave a like and a subscribe. It would be much appreciated. Thank you.